The handouts or review materials must be treated with utmost confidentiality. It shall be the responsibility of the person whose name appears therein that the handouts or review materials are not photocopied or in any way reproduced, shared, or lent to any person or disposed in any manner. Any handouts or review materials found in the possession of another person whose name does not appear therein shall be prima facie evidence of violation of RA 8293. Top-notch review materials are updated every 6 months based on the current trends and feedback. Please buy all recommended review books and other materials.
Hi, I'm Jerry Magallanes and welcome again to your IM review. Let's now go to nephro. So, if not for sodium, di ba, sana nasa nephro ako eh. Pero mahirap kasi siya. So anyway, kapag magre-review kayo ng nephro part, be sure lang na alam niyo yung nephron physiology. So I'll gloss over itong unang dalawang picture. It's on your reviewer. Be sure to read some notes on that. So let's have a quick review lang on what happens on your nephron. So general overview lang. So you have your your nephron is subdivided in your cortical part, the outer part ng kidney, and your inner part. The outer part of your kidney, the cortex, is in general impermeable to water. Walang nangyayari na exchange ng water doon. All of water movement happens doon lang sa medulla. Nakadepende na lang kung impermeable or permeable yung tubule na bababa doon sa medulla part mo. Okay. So, how do you produce your urine? So, it's from your blood. So, it comes in from your afferent arteriole, which is mainly regulated by your ANP, your prostaglandin, such that kapag may mga substances ka like NSAIDs that decreases your prostaglandin, which constricts your afferent arteriole, nakakaroon ka ng acute kidney injury kasi walang masyadong papasok na blood dun sa afferent arteriole. Your blood gets filtered into your glomerulus via hydrostatic pressure and then comes out into your efferent arteriole. Now, your efferent arteriole is regulated naman by your angiotensin. So, angiotensin, it tenses, it constricts. Kapag meron kang mga ACE inhibitor, no, mga angiotensin blockers mo, ang nangyayari naman dyan, nagdadilate yung efferent arteriole. Such that, imbes na ma-filter out yung blood mo into the glomerulus because of the hydrostatic pressure, the hydrostatic pressure decreases kasi nakadilate yung efferent arteriole. So, labas lang labas yung tubig. So, when you have ACE inhibitors, okay, ano nangyayari? The overdose, pwede kang mag-AKI. Okay? Ganun din, no? Kaya, no, kapag meron kang patient na naka-NSAID, tas naka-ACE inhibitor pa. And then, meron ka pang CKD. Really terrible. No? Ayaw na ayaw mo nun. Now, your blood goes first into your PCT. Your PCT is stereo cortex. So, walang movement ng water. But, sobrang daming nangyayari dito sa PCT. Kaya kung tatanungin kayo, for example, ang tanong, saan nare-reabsorb ang ganito? Okay? Chances are, kung pipili ka ng choice, piliin nyo na yung PCT. Kasi chances are doon nare-reabsorb yan. So, your glucose, amino acid, your phosphates, your salts, sodium chloride, potassium, your bicarbonate are all, okay, reabsorbed in your PCT. Now, your filtrate now goes into your medulla. Kapag pumasok sa medulla, okay, water goes out. Water in general goes out in your thin descending loop such that kapag dumaan siya dito, 20% na lang yung natitira dun sa original filtrate mo na tubig. Okay, nawawala lahat. So, this thin descending loop, thin siya kasi it's very permeable to water. So, kung may dadaan na tubig sa intraluminally, magdi-diffuse out lang siya. Now, bakit siya nagdi-diffuse out? Because your medulla is really hypertonic. What makes it hypertonic? It's your thick ascending loop. Okay, etong small part na to, it's a rather smaller segment of your loop of Henle. Okay, but this is the powerhouse of your nephron. Kasi it actively, okay, reabsorbs sodium and chloride, your salts, into the interstitium. So, kung mas maraming sodium sa interstitium, mas maraming salt, it's very hypertonic. Where sodium goes, water goes. If permeable yung tubule mo. And the only permeable here is the thin descending. Okay? Now, your filtrate goes up, back into your DCT, in your cortical area na wala na naman nangyayari sa water. But, the tonicity is further parang tweaked by your sodium and chloride symport na thiazide sensitive. So, eto na yun. So, pag nakarinig kayo ng thiazide, automatic, dapat mai-imagine nyo na, okay, nasa DCT to. It somehow affects the macula densa. It somehow is related to the distal sodium delivery. Okay, dito na rin nagsisimula magkaroon ka ng mga ROMK receptors that is responsible for secreting your potassium out. So, if you see, here in the distal DCT and in your collecting duct, dito lang nangyayari yung potassium secretion. Okay, that is mainly regulated by your aldosterone. Okay, dito rin nag-act out yung vasopressin. Yung vasopressin naman, your collecting duct kasi is thick, no? It's impermeable dapat to water. But when you have vasopressin, ang ginagawa niya, tawag dito, it inserts aquaporins into your tubular interface such that yung water pwedeng mag-traverse kahit impermeable talaga yung tubule. Okay? So, magre-reabsorb ka ng water. Okay? Dito rin nangyayari yung most of the aldosterone effect. So, eto rin yung nagsosodium reabsorption ka in response to sodium, in response to aldosterone. And, consequential to that is the secretion of your potassium and a secretion of your proton. Okay? So, I've already said this. Okay, just review the effects of your parathyroid hormone. Okay, ito lang yung hindi ko masyadong nasabi. Pero have a glance at this and you'll have an easier time reviewing the following topics. So let's start with hyperkalemia. Okay, very, very common and deadly as well. So here you have a 40-year-old male brought to the ER after sustaining a vehicular accident. So ito kunwari yan. And then ikaw yung intern na kita ka sa Foley when you inserted it initially. So may dark urine. You ask the patient, may myalgia siya and napansin mo na nagdi-decrease na yung urine output. So mga 10-20 ml per hour na lang siya sa ER. Pumalik yung lab sa inyo, the blood chem is back with a potassium of 6. So that's high. Okay, ano kaya yung case na to? So first, what is the electrolyte disorder? So you have a potassium of 6. Ito yung mga value na dapat kabisado nyo kahit natutulog kayo pag ginulat kayo. Anong normal value ng potassium? It should be 3.5 to 5.5. Dapat kabisado nyo yan by heart. Okay? So this is hyperkalemia because your potassium is greater than 5.5. The most urgent step in hyperkalemia is what? ECG. Okay? Hindi ka mag-intervene agad. Kasi pwedeng mali. Pwedeng lab error. Matagal lang tumusok. Maraming blood vessel na nasira yung intern or yung nag-venipuncture. Pwede kang mag-hyper-K. To check that, you do your ECG. So, what ECG changes are expected? When your potassium is 6, you consider or you have to look on tall peak T waves. Okay? And what treatment do you recommend if the patient is hyperkalemic and with ECG changes? So, ibig sabihin lang yan, confirm na totoo yung hyperkalemia mo. So, you initiate your treatment with calcium gluconate. Not really a treatment, but it's the initial intervention to stabilize the membrane so you won't have any arrhythmias. Mamaya pupunta tayo dyan kung bakit ka nagkakaroon ng arrhythmia with hyper-K. So, how to approach hyper-K is to first prioritize and assess the need for emergency treatment prior to comprehensive workup. Since deadly nga yung hyper-K could cause arrhythmias, bradyarrhythmias, kailangan mag-i-intervene ka kagad before malaman mo kung ano, saan ba talaga yung nanggaling yung potassium, yung hyper-K or yung extra potassium niya. Most of the common causes of hyper-K are the following. So, ang pinaka-common would be decrease in renal potassium excretion. So, ito pwedeng mangyari kapag sinabi ko kanina, meron kang drugs affecting the RAAS. So, meron kang mga ACE inhibitors your ARBs. For example, then, meron kang rarer, mga hyporeninemic hypoaldosteronism. So, hark back lang sa endo, para lang tong hormone axis. So, your RAAS is your renin, angiotensin aldosterone system. So, na-upregulate siya. Tatandaan nyo, ang RAAS is for a fight response. Okay, so kunwari, nasaksak ka, you are bleeding, okay, magsisimula ka, anong mangyayari? Since mababa yung blood pressure mo, ang mangyayari dyan is your aldosterone will go up. Okay, the second A, the RAA. Okay, so your aldosterone will go up. It will cause sodium reabsorption in exchange with potassium secretion. Okay? So, kapag wala ka nung RAAS, wala yung ganung effect, so, hindi ka makaka-excrete ng potassium. So, anong mangyayari? So, you end up, parang iniipon mo yung potassium sa katawan mo. So, magkakaroon ka ng hyper-K. Adrenal insufficiency, same thing. Wala kang aldosterone or kulang ka sa aldosterone. Okay? Happens kapag may critical illness ka. Okay? So, kung wala kang aldosterone, wala kang kahihang mag-secrete out ng potassium. So, you end up being hyperkalemic. So, you have redistribution and reduced tissue uptake. Digoxin directly acts on your NAK, no, transporter sa mga cells, sa lahat ng cells mo. So, it keeps your Na out and your potassium in, di ba? Na out of the cell, potassium inside the cell. So, if you disrupt this, your potassium is nasa ano na, nasa labas lang siya. Okay? So, hindi siya ma-uptake intercellularly. So, you end up being hyperkalemic. Indirectly, your beta blocker, ganun din siya. So, your adrenergic response kind of triggers your NAK ATPase kasi, di ba, na receptors. So, kapag wala ka rin nun, so, you end up with hyperkalemia. Okay. So, excessive intake. Okay. Pero minsan lang yung mangyari kasi very, very efficient yung ating nephron in regulating your potassium. Or kahit ilalabas mo siya sa gut mo. Okay. Kayang-kaya yan masense ng katawan. Kahit yung distal part lang ng nephron yung responsible in secreting your potassium, kayang-kaya niyang i-handle. In fact, nakakaroon ka lang ng hyperkalemia from excessive intake kapag may concomitant kang renal failure na. So, kunyari, may beginning ka na pala na CKD, hindi mo alam, tapos ang dami mong potassium intake, then doon ka lang magkaka-hyper-K. And then with our case, you have increased potassium release from tissues. So, potassium is the main intercellular ion, di ba? So, kapag may sudden release, nabugbog ka, kunwari anong tawag dito pag nagbabike ka, or nag-intense exercise ka, or whatever, pwedeng mangyari yan sa'yo, magra-rhabdo ka. Or, kunwari, nagsiseizure ka, okay, may tetany, okay, so your muscles are overworked, they release potassium in your body, so you end up being hyperkalemic. So, ganun yung sa patient natin. So, siya ay na-aksidente, nasira yung muscles, potassium goes out in the from the cells into the intravascular space, causing your hyperkalemia. So, ECG is the most urgent step in hyper-K, and the classic ECG changes are the following. So, you expect tall peak T waves from 5.5 to 6.5 na potassium, loss of P waves kapag 6.5 to 7.5. You have widened QRS 7 to 8. Okay? Sorry, so I've already talked about this already. So, yung mga changes na to, hindi to matagal nangyayari. Medyo mabilis yan. And because of the yung kakayahan ng potassium na mag-shift intracellular, extracellular ng potassium, pwede kang mag-arrhythmia agad. Hindi dahan-dahang nangyayari yung tall peak T, tas loss of P, pwedeng mabilis yan. That's why you have to be quick in assessing your hyper-K. Kaya ECG talaga yung mauuna. Again, these are the ECG changes. Be familiar lang yan. Wala naman ibibigay na ECG sa boards. Usually talagang text lang. Okay? So, back to basic science. Okay? So, I have to, to be able to understand hyper-K and hypo-K, kailangan alam niyo yung concept na to. So, this is your cell, for example. This is your intracellular fluid. This is your extracellular fluid. Okay? So, you have factors that pushes your potassium outside, okay, papunta sa ECF, causing hyper K. So usually mga catabolic processes to. So hyperosmolarity, exercise, lysis, acidosis. So kapag toxic ka, may fever ka, may infection ka, hypotensive ka, dehydrated ka, okay, you tend to be hyperkalemic. Now, there are factors naman that pushes your potassium inside the cellular compartment. Usually, ito yung mga anabolic. Pag kumain ka, so you have insulin surge, your potassium goes inside. Kasama na rin dito yung mga beta agonists mo and kapag alkalotic ka. So, kabaligtaran siya nung processes that kicks your potassium outside of the cell. So, be sure to note this. Okay? So, how do we treat hyperkalemia? Okay, so number one, there are factors or medications or maneuvers that offers immediate antagonism of the cardiac effects. Not really anti-potassium, no? Pero it kind of prevents yung mga pinakaayaw mong nangyayari na arrhythmia sa hyperkalemia. Okay, so you give your IV calcium gluconate. So ito yung mga 10 mils calcium gluconate push, slow IV push, mga usually yan, dahan-dahan mo binibigay over a span of 2 to 3 minutes. Kung tamad ka, marami kang patient, so you give your 10 mils calcium gluc, i-dilute mo lang sa 100 na D5 containing fluid, and then infuse over 20-30 minutes. Okay, for membrane stabilization. So you have interventions that could do rapid reduction of plasma concentration of your potassium. So GI solution is fast, but it's temporary. GI solution is glucose and insulin. Okay, never give your insulin because it needs your glucose as a co-transporter para mag-act on to push your potassium inside the cell. Okay, so ito yung binibigay mo kapag kami nung resident kami, no, ang dami naming hyper K na CKD, nag-iintay lahat ng HD. Okay, so tatanungin namin isa-isa, kailan ka huling nabigyan ng GI solution? Kasi temporary lang yon. Okay? Huwag kang magsisend ng patient na CKD na idadialysis mo, na kakabigay mo lang ng GI solution. Kasi since yung GI solution, it pushes your potassium inside the cell, hindi siya available for exchange. Lalo na kung maiksi lang yung initial dialysis mo, mga 2 hours lang, hindi niya mapapababa masyado yung potassium, hindi niya makukuha. No? 4 hours yung tinatagal ng GI solution mo, yung effect niya, yung temporary effect niya. So, ang ginagawa namin nung resident kami, yung mga patients na nabigyan na past 4 hours ng GI solution, sila yung iaakyat namin sa HD unit para yung potassium nila nakalabas na ulit sa intravascular space para ready na siya kuhanin ng dialysis. So again, GI solution, you could also give your salbutamol, a beta agonist, shifts your potassium inside the cell, temporary lang ulit. Then you may remove your potassium. You can do so by giving your cation exchange resin, sodium polystyrene sulfonate, or your Kayexalate. Don't confuse this with your phosphate binders, ay yung sevelamer. Iba yun. That's for phosphorus. This is for potassium. So your Kayexalate. Anong ginagawa nito? So yung mga dietary na potassium, hindi mo na i-absorb. Okay? Pero kung meron ka na talagang inherent na hyper K na nasa katawan mo na, hindi niya na matatanggal yon. Okay? Yung dietary potassium lang yung pwede niyang i-prevent. Your diuretics, your loop, okay, is known to remove your potassium. Okay? Your thiazide, indirectly na lang yan. So, paano niya nagko-cause ng hypokalemia? So, remember sa thiazide, nandun siya sa DCT, di ba? So, it prevents your sodium and chloride symport dun sa DCT. So, kapag hindi niya nare-reabsorb yung sodium dun sa DCT, ang daming pumupuntang sodium doon sa collecting duct, doon sa collecting tubule mo. So, kung maraming sodium na pumupunta doon, ay sasabihin ng aldosterone, kunin ko nga tong si sodium na to. Okay? So, pag kinuha niya si sodium, in exchange, ilalabas niya si potassium. That's why it can cause hypokalemia. Okay? To some extent, no, indirectly siya, unlike your loop diuretics. And then your IV fluid with plain NSS, aside from diluting effect, okay, it can cause yung mga parang it can counteract the arrhythmias the same way as calcium gluconate does, parang membrane stabilization. However, sa mga recent experiences natin, hindi na to ginagawa. Kaya ako ni-read, no? Hindi na yung ginagawa. Kasi your sodium chloride will give you hyperchloremic acidosis and your acidosis will cause hyperkalemia. Okay, so no na yan. Okay? Hemodialysis kapag intractable na ng hyperkalemia. In fact, your intractable hyperkalemia is one of the main indications for your dialysis. So, your cardiac arrhythmias in hyper-K are sinus brady, sinus arrest, your VTAC, and your VFib. It can also cause asystole, mga bigla-bigla na lang asystole, pwede rin yon. So, ito, hindi to dahan-dahan. Pwede rin kahit ano dyan. Okay? Pwede rin mabilis, no, from sinus brady, tapos nag-arrest. Ganon siya. Okay? Hindi yan parang at this level, ganito yung mangyayari. Hindi. No. Parang at any time, pwede kang mag-arrhythmia kung ano man dyan. Okay, so again, your GI solution effect begins in 10 to 20 minutes. So, we love this at the ER. And your patient with renal insufficiency, hindi na umiihi, and with hyper-K, may require dialysis. So, that's why when you have hyper-K patients, tas bigyan mo ng diuretic, nagbigay ka ng Lasix or your furosemide, be sure to note kung umiihi siya. Huwag kang umasa na bababa yung potassium mo kung hindi naman umiihi yung patient mo. Okay? So, ganun yun. So, after first, second, third hour, kung wala pa ring ihi, yung patient mo after furosemide, tas hyper-K siya, better dialyze na lang your patient. So, this is how your calcium gluconate works for hyper-K. So, this is the membrane potential of your cardiac myocyte. So, you have your resting potential, you have your threshold potential para mag-fire siya to an action potential. Okay? So, if you have a high potassium, your resting potential is actually elevated such that konti na lang yung kailangan mong spike to produce an action potential. That's why prone ka sa mga arrhythmia. Now, when you give your calcium gluconate, so you increase your calcium cations, ang ginagawa mo dyan, you increase your threshold. Okay? So, if your high potassium, increases your resting, and if you increase your threshold, so magiging same lang yung difference ng threshold and resting potential. That's why, na sa stabilization membrane, hindi ka as much arrhythmias. Okay? So, just a summary. So, for membrane stabilization, you can give your calcium gluconate. Hypertonic saline, hindi na natin yan ginagawa. So, you give your calcium gluc, 10 mils, 2 to 3 minutes. 10 minutes yung sabi ng ibang books. Pero 2 to 3 minutes, okay na. So, you can also give that as a drip kung gusto mo. Shifter, so you have your GI solution. So, you 10 units IV, and then you have your D50-50 na isang vial. So, 20 minutes yung onset niyan, pero temporary lang, no? 4 to 6 hours lang yung effect niya for your hyper-K. Your salbutamol, your albuterol, your beta agonist, ganun din, i-nebulize mo siya. Okay? So, 30 minutes yung onset, pero temporary lang din. And then your excretors. The most powerful will be your furosemide, pero hindi yan e-effect kung hindi na umiihi yung patient mo. Your sodium bicarbonate, hindi na natin yan ginagamit talaga for hyper-K. Okay? Kasi especially if you're giving the pure form, kasi ang taas ng sodium nun, it can paradoxically aggravate your hyperchloremia. Okay? Your hypernatremia, hyperchloremia. So ayaw mo na rin yan. Okay? And then your potassium binders. So your potassium binders, as I've said earlier, sa mga dietary potassium sources lang siya nag-e-effect, no? Pero yung definitive treatment natin for hyperkalemia would still be your HB. Now, let's move on to hypokalemia. So, babaliktarin natin yung mundo natin for a moment. So, you have here a 32-year-old male admitted to the hospital with weakness and a serum potassium of 2. The patient had been very healthy until 2 months previously when he developed intermittent leg weakness. So, what is the most urgent step? So, dito, intervene agad. Okay? So, you do your potassium replacement. paano ka ba mag-potassium replacement? Hindi naman siguro itatanong sa boards, no? Hindi na kayo pagko-computing dyan. Pero ang shortcut ko, no? Parang ano yan, 600, 400, 200. Okay, and then you have 3.5, 2.5 to, so you have 3 to 4, kapag potassium 3 to 4, you replace 200. 2 to 3, you replace 400. Less than 2, you replace 600. Okay, parang ganun lang. Madali. Okay, so anyway, what disorder should be investigated? This is hyperthyroidism or Graves. So, ito yung classic na parang Asian male, young, okay, tas hypo-K na presents as hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Ito yung pwedeng initial presentation niya. Okay, so, kwento ko lang saglit. Meron kaming patient noon sa ER nung residency pa ako nito. So, sa ER, second year ako nun. So, this patient, young male, keeps on coming back sa ER. Okay? Potassium hypokalemia. Pero nire-replace lang siya. Okay? Tapos, siguro mga nakatatlo, 4 na punta na siya sa ER, nire-replace lang yung potassium niya, and then uwi. Di ba ganun sa PGH kasi ako before. So, ganun yun eh. So, hindi mo naman siya i-admit eh. Kung ma-resolve mo agad yung problem niya sa ER, sasabihin mo lang sa kanya, okay, uwi ka na, eto yung labs mo, pupunta ka dun sa OPD the next day. Pero syempre, hindi pumupunta yung patient. For whatever reason, hindi siya makapunta. Or feeling niya, magaling na siya. So, ang siste, babalik yung patient, hypokalemic na naman. Since hindi siya nakakapunta sa OPD, nagre-replace lang, at paulit-ulit sasabihin, pupunta ka ng OPD, tapos hindi siya pupunta, ultimately, on his 4th visit, no, ang dating ng patient, hindi na hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Ano na, thyroid storm na. So, miss out ng lahat ng tao yon na parang, thyroid pala tong patient na to. Hindi na siya na-work up. No? So, ito yung mga sasabihin na parang rare instances, pero it happens. So, when you catch a patient, lalo na kung pangalawang beses na na-present, male, young, hypokalemic periodic paralysis, be sure to investigate for Graves. So, request for FT3, TSH, FT4. Okay? So, causes ng hypokalemia would be dietary insufficiency. So, ito rin yung mga nakikita natin sa refeeding syndrome. Sa refeeding syndrome, you have your hypomag, hypo-K, hypofos due to upregulation ng insulin. No? So, kunwari, hindi ka kumakain ng matagal. No? Tapos pinakain ka bigla. Pag pinakain ka bigla, sobra yung surge ng insulin mo sa katawan. And ano nga yung sabi natin sa insulin? Tapos pinakain ka, so you have many glucose. It can cause a shift. Tapos yung potassium mo pupunta inside of your cells, causing hypokalemia. And sometimes, it can cause troublesome arrhythmia rin. Okay? Minsan, kapag lupa na lang yung kinakain mo, sobrang hirap mo or whatever, your clay can actually bind to your potassium in the gut. So, hindi siya available for absorption. So, wala kang potassium. Geophagia yung tawag doon. No, very trivial source of hypokalemia. GI or renal losses. So, kunwari nagda-diarrhea ka, yan. Renal losses. So, you have channelopathies or tubular loss of your potassium. Kabaligtaran ng hyperaldo or ng adrenal insufficiency. Here, you have hyperaldosterone state or your Conn's syndrome, your primary hyperaldosteronism. So, again, kung marami kang aldosterone, okay, so marami kang sodium na bumabalik sa katawan, and in exchange, your potassium is being secreted continuously into your urine, causing you to be hypokalemic. So, your renal tubular acidosis can also cause your hypokalemia. So, you treat your hypokalemia, replace mo lang. And you treat the underlying disease. So, for example, in our patient, might need anti-thyroid medications. Okay? So, again, so you have male, young, Asian, think of Graves' disease. ECG changes. So, you're now looking for U waves. QU. Okay? Humahaba yung, imbis na maging QT interval, naging QU siya. Alright? You also avoid glucose-containing fluids in correcting hypokalemia. That's why it's a no-no na, kunyari, magre-replace ka ng potassium, tas ang order mo, 40 mx potassium in blank D5 water. It kind of negates the, 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 the theory behind it. So, not only na hindi siya compatible na IV fluid, okay, it's a no-no physiologic-wise. Okay, so when you replace your potassium, ano nga yung mas effective na replacement? Oral or intravenous? Oral. If wala namang contraindication, your gut is very, very good in absorbing your potassium. Okay, so use your gut. Oral replacement, yun yung primary consideration. Second lang yung IV correction ng potassium. Okay? Punta naman tayo dun sa mga channelopathies. Hindi natin maiiwasan na mag-discuss ng channelopathies when we're talking about hypokalemia. So, samahan nyo lang ako dito, no? So, this is your thick ascending loop. This is your DCT. This is your collecting duct. Normally, okay, dun sa thick ascending loop mo, 'di ba, ang nag-govern ng or yung powerhouse ng nephron mo is it's because of the Na2CLK co-transport. Okay, na active transport. Kinukuha niya lahat ng mga ions niya yan, nilalagay niya sa interstitium para maging hypertonic. Okay, doon sa DCT naman, dito makikita yung NaCl, Na chloride, co-transport or symport na thiazide sensitive. Okay, so dito yung parang more minute na regulation ng sodium and water. Doon naman sa collecting duct, dito naman nagre-reside yung epithelial sodium channels and your ROMK receptors na aldosterone sensitive, which your aldosterone induces your sodium, no, na ma-reabsorb and your potassium being secreted out into the luminal side. So, one of your channelopathies causing hypokalemia is your Gitelman syndrome. Your Gitelman syndrome is like a thiazide diuretic because it mimics a sodium chloride co-transport problem. So, wala ito. Okay? So, kung wala kang sodium and chloride na reabsorption, ang nangyayari, you have more distal delivery of your sodium into your collecting duct. Okay. So, si collecting duct mo, masasaya, daming sodium. Tataas si aldosterone, re-reabsorb si sodium, ilalabas si potassium. That's why you have your hypokalemia. So, it mimics your thiazide diuretics. You have no hypertension in this syndrome kasi intact yung RAAS mo. Intact yung yung collecting duct part mo. So, yung RAAS mo intact. So, kaya niyang mag-maneuver. Meron kang decreased urinary calcium or urinary calcium excretion. So, you won't have stones. Mamaya pupuntahan natin yan kung bakit. And then, here you have your Bartter syndrome. Your Bartter syndrome naman is a loop problem. It's something to do with the NAK2Cl symport. So, it kind of mimics your loop diuretics kasi ito yung target ng loop diuretics. You won't have any hypertension din. You will have increased sodium distal delivery din sa collecting duct kasi hindi mo nare-reabsorb dito. Daming sodium, pupuntang collecting duct. Intact si RAAS. So, si aldosterone, sasabihin niya, daming sodium. Reabsorb natin si sodium, potassium excreted. So, intact yung RAAS mo, intact yung collecting duct system mo, so you won't have any hypertension. Pero dito, in contrast with your Gitelman, you will have increased urinary calcium excretion. Ito yung mga nagkakaroon ka ng stones. Later on, pupunta tayo doon, bakit ka nagkakaroon ng stones sa Bartter at sa Gitelman wala. Last na channelopathy would be your Liddle syndrome causing hypokalemia. Ito naman, hindi to loss of function. It's actually a gain of function na meron kang upregulation ng epithelial sodium channel mo. So, it mimics mineralocorticoid activity in the DCT. So, para siyang con syndrome, primary hyperaldo. Okay? So, to differentiate lang the two, so sa primary con, magme-measure ka ng aldosterone level. So, sa primary con, madami kang mineralocorticoid activity, madami yung aldosterone mo. Okay? So, pag nag-measure ka ng aldosterone, it's elevated. Dito sa Liddle syndrome, pag nag-measure ka ng aldosterone, mababa siya. Kasi ito yung may problem ka. Okay, so parang by feedback mechanism, yung aldosterone mo mababa dito. And if sira yung collecting duct, sira as your system, you will have your hypertension here. You will have parang unchecked sodium reabsorption. So where sodium goes, water goes, so you tend to be edematous and you will have hypertension. Okay. Okay, so punta naman tayo dito sa kung bakit nagkakaroon ka ng hypercalciuria dun sa Barter, pero may hypocalciuria ka sa Gittelman. So punta muna tayo sa Gittelman. Again, Gittelman, nasa DCT tayo, you have a problem with the NaCl syn-porter, di ba? So ang nangyayari dito, normally, okay, your NaCl traverses, okay, from your is being reabsorbed from your apical side to your intracellular side. Okay, kapag nawala yung NaCl co-transport mo, na-upregulate yung CA-ATPase pump mo dito. Okay, by virtue of electrochemical gradient. Okay, so ang nangyayari dito, your calcium tends to be reabsorbed from the apical side to the basolateral side. That's why parang nauubos yung calcium mo doon sa luminal side, doon sa apical side. So, nagkakaroon ka ng hypocalciuria. In contrast dito sa Barter syndrome. So, again, your Barter syndrome, it has something to do with the Na2CLK pump, which is also the site of your loop diuretic, like your furosemide. Okay? Normally, you will have a paracellular reabsorption of your sodium, your calcium, and your magnesium in the thin descending loop, in your thick ascending loop. Okay? But when you have a loss of function of this Na2CLK co-transport, nawawala rin yung paracellular reabsorption of your sodium, calcium, and magnesium. That's why yung calcium mo naiiwan dun sa luminal side and you tend to form calcium stones dun sa tubules mo. Okay? That's why you have hypercalciuria dun sa Barter. In contrast dun sa Gittelman. And again, dun sa Liddle, meron kang gain of function ng epithelial sodium channel, causing the unregulated reuptake of your sodium, causing hypertension. Okay, let's now move on to hypercalcemia. Okay, so here you have a 58-year-old male with a 2-day history of confusion and weakness. So the patient had back pain for the past 3 months and a significant weight loss of over 10 kilos during the past 4 months. He had a history of recurrent lower urinary tract symptoms and elevated PSA, and the initial laboratory test showed elevated calcium and creatinine. Okay, so what is the most likely diagnosis in this case? So this is hypercalcemia of malignancy, likely from prostate cancer, because of the back pain and the lower urinary tract symptoms na medyo obstructive, di ba? What is the first step in the diagnostic evaluation of any patient presenting with hypercalcemia? That is to compute for the corrected calcium. And how do you compute for the corrected calcium? You get the albumin, and for every 10 drop of albumin, mg per dl yun, you multiply it by 0.2 and then you add it to the measured calcium and then you get the corrected calcium. That's because almost 50% of your calcium in your blood is bound by your albumin. So a drop of it releases some calcium in your blood. So what is the next therapeutic step? That is to hydrate your patient. So madali lang yung gamot sa hypercalcemia. It's just hydration. And you have to be aggressive with your hydration. Okay, so this is just an overview of your calcium metabolism. Syempre, kasama na rin dito yung phosphorus because your vitamin D and your PTH, ito yung mga nag-govern ng calcium. Between the two, PTH has the central role in calcium metabolism. Medyo babanggitin din to sa endong module nyo dito sa IM review. So, your PTH is mainly secreted by your parathyroid glands. So, it senses low calcium in your serum. So, it increases PTH via a negative loop feedback. Your PTH has many actions. So primarily, it goes to your bone and induces bone resorption. So kapag nag-resorb ka ng bone, since you have hydroxycalcium apatite crystals, so you release calcium and you release phosphorus. So you increase serum calcium and serum phosphorus. Your PTH is also responsible for activating your alpha-1 hydroxylase, which converts your inactive calcidiol from your liver to the active form calcitriol, no, in the kidneys. So, etong vitamin D naman na to, the active form, its role is mainly to increase absorption of calcium and phosphorus. Your PTH, on the other hand, na medyo dito papasok yung parang medyo paradoxical effect ng PTH sa kidney. So, it increases reabsorption of calcium in exchange with the secretion of phosphorus. All in all, sa sobrang lakas ng PTH na effect niya sa kidneys, ang net effect ng PTH sa katawan is that you have increased calcium and decreased phosphorus. So, take note, medyo mali yung, I think, yung image dun sa reviewer nyo. So, ang tama is that the net effect of PTH is a net increase in serum calcium and a net decrease in serum phosphorus. So, punta tayo sa mechanisms of hypercalcemia. Busy slide, pero isa-isahin natin, madali lang to. So, kailangan alam natin yung mga may role sa calcium, di ba? Sabi natin, your PTH, and your vitamin D. And then, pupunta tayo sa ibang mechanisms. So, magsimula tayo dito sa left side of the screen. So, here you have your granulomatous diseases like your sarcoidosis, sa atin tuberculosis. They are known to cause hypercalcemia, pero not so much. Ito yung mga barely elevated na calcium na hypercalcemic patients na parang wala namang nararamdaman. So, this is because of the ectopic, meaning outside of the kidneys, na production of your alpha-1 hydroxylase. So, katulad na sinabi natin, your alpha-1 hydroxylase converts your calcidiol to the active form calcitriol, which increases the absorption of your calcium and your phosphorus in the gut. Okay, if you have increased vitamin D intake, meron kami dati patients sa St. Luke's, no? Mayaman, syempre, di ba? So, kahit nasa ICU, hindi namin nakokontrol yung mga kinakain kasi VIP, no? Ayun pala, no, mataas yung calcium niya every time. Hindi namin alam kung bakit. Kahit nag-hydrate kami, laging mataas yung calcium. Tapos, nung nag-review nung dietary intake niya, kumakain pala siya ng mga dried na mga oyster mushrooms. Sa nature, mushrooms, because of their exposure to sunlight, meron sila talagang inherent ng calcidiol. Tapos, pag kinakain mo yon, so nakakuha ka ng vitamin D in its active form, tapos yun, tataas yung calcium mo. So, nung tinanggal namin yung oyster mushroom dun sa diet niya, naging normal na yung calcium levels ng patient na yon. So, primary hyperparathyroidism, if you have an inherent increase in PTH production, then you all have the effects. Increase the activation of alpha-1 hydroxylase for your vitamin D2 to vitamin D3, your PTH direct effect on your bone resorption, and its effect on calcium reabsorption in the kidney and phosphorus secretion. So, lahat nangyayari yan. So, if you have PTH, lahat yun mangyayari. Sometimes, when you have malignancy, okay, pag kumuha ka ng calcium mataas, tapos, ang susunod na workup mo dyan, kukuha ka ng PTH, your intact PTH. Pag kumuha ka ng intact PTH and it's low, mataas yung calcium, therefore, you can suspect na merong malignancy. Baka meron siyang parathyroid hormone-related peptide. It acts the same way as your PTH. Tapos, down the line, meron din siya activation of your alpha-1 hydroxylase, converting vitamin D2 to vitamin D3, and your resorption, and stuff like that. Your malignancy can also, aside from producing PTHRP, it can also have direct effect kapag meron kang mga bone mets na medyo mga osteolytic lesions. So, may osteoclastic activity ka. So, para ka nagre-resorb ng bone na rin. Releasing your calcium and your phosphorus. And in your malignancy, you can also have some cytokines like your IL-6, your rank ligand, your IL-1. That increases your rank ligand. Your rank ligand is responsible for the brush border, no? Doon siya nag-act. Yung osteoclast mo, yung rank ligand, yun yung signal nila, yung receptor nila para mag-signal sila na and they will start to resorb. Okay. So, this is also the cause of your hypercalcemia in Paget's disease of the bone. Ito naman may osteoblast ka na nagpo-produce ng maraming rank ligand. So, kung marami kang rank ligand, nagre-resorb yung bone. Kasi, kung matatandaan niyo yung histology niyo, yung osteoclast para lang siyang slave ng mga osteoblast, 'di ba? Parang yung osteoblast pa rin yung nagmamando sa kanya how to resorb via the rank ligands. Okay? Sa hyperthyroidism, when you have increased circulating thyroid hormones, ganun din. Marami rin yung rank ligand mo. Tapos mataas yung osteogenic protein ratio. So, it kind of counteracts your rank ligand by promoting bone creation naman. Your thiazide diuretics, nasabi ko na to kanina, no? So, kapag may thiazide diuretics, parang kang may Gitelman. So, parang due to the electrochemical gradient, na activate mo yung calcium reabsorption from the tubule to the cell to the basolateral membrane to your blood. Hypocalciuric ka, pwede ka maging hypercalcemic. Okay, so ganun lang doon. Milk alkali syndrome, ito, yung mga tao na parang umiinom ng maraming gatas. Tapos akala nila yung pagka-bloated nila, akala nila parang GERD, pero lactose intolerant lang. Tapos take ng mga alkali salts for the akala nila GERD. Yan, pwede silang magkaroon ng milk alkali syndrome. Uninhibited lang na calcium uptake to. So aside from that, plain and simple immobilization. So yung mga stroke patients, ng mga payat na tao, kala mo dehydrated, pero ayun pala, hindi lang gumagalaw. So kung hindi ka gumagalaw, wala kang mechanical stimulation sa osteocytes mo, wala kang osteoblastic new bone formation, so walang na-incorporate na calcium sa bone mo, so yung calcium mo nakakalat lang sa body, makes you hypercalcemic. All of those things can lead to the symptoms of hypercalcemia. Okay? So, nasabi ko na yung approach. Laging check muna yung albumin before committing to hypercalcemia. Pwede ka kasing magkaroon ng mga falsely low na mga calcium sa mga very sick patients. Sa ICU, lalong-lalo na. Kasi albumin nila bumababa. So, pag bumaba yung albumin nila, mas marami yung unbound calcium leading to hypercalcemia. Alright? So, treatment for hypercalcemia is number 1, saline diuresis. So, hydration. So, as much as 4 to 6 liters in the first 24 hours. Kung wala namang contraindication sa hydration, wala namang heart failure, di naman matanda, sige lang, hydrate ka lang. You can also force diuresis. So, pag sinabi natin force diuresis, you hydrate and then you give furo to eliminate that calcium, that extra calcium. Your bisphosphonates acts on the brush border. It kind of disrupts the bone resorption. It prevents the bone resorption. So, your pamindronate, solandronate, remember sila yung nakakapil, esophagitis sa pharmacology nyo. So, ito rin yung mga nagdi-disintegrate kapag nahulog sa tubig. Sayang yan, no? Mahal-mahal pa naman. Your steroids, hindi siya ginagamit routinely, pero it can cause osteoporosis. So, makikita nyo yung effect na parang, okay, baka pwede natin gawin yung steroids for hypercalcemic patient, pero we don't do that because ang daming side effect ng steroid. Your denosumab is your rank ligand na parang monoclonal. So, usually ginagamit to sa mga may mga bone mets, prostate, breast CA, na may mga hypercalcemia, daming bone mets para matigil yung resorption. Tanggalin mo yung signaling dun sa rank ligand. Ito yung denosumab. Very, very effective. So, all of those things, yung mga sinabi ko kanina sources ng hypercalcemia, will all go down and have its effects na pwede nating masummarize into bones, stones, groans, and psychiatric overtone. So, bones, ito yung mga marami kang bone pain, pwede kang may mga mets doon, or pwede kang magkaroon ng mga fracture. Stones, meron kang urinary calcium stones, can cause flank pain, Groans, may mga GI and skeletal muscle issues ka. Usually constipation yan, muscle weakness, fatigue. And then psychiatric overtones. You can have cognitive dysfunction because of hypercalcemia. So, it's common for hypercalcemic patients na papasok na obtunded, tulog ng tulog. Lalo na yung mga bedridden na patients. Dehydrated, causes dehydration, hypercalcemia, immobilization, stuff like that. Halo-halo na yung causes. So, punta na naman tayo sa kabaligtaran. So, kung mga hypercalcemia sa mga malignancy cases, saan yung ward makikita usually ang mga hypocalcemic? Usually makikita nyo to post-op sa mga na total thyroidectomy, di ba? Kasi nawala yung parathyroid hormone nila. So, when you have hypocalcemia, yung ang bumababa lang na calcium is the extracellular calcium. The intracellular calcium, yung concentration nun, hindi siya nagbabago. That's why, relatively, meron kang more positively charged and more depolarized na cell dahil dun sa ganung milieu. So, kapag may relatively depolarized kang cellular milieu, no, generate ng action potential. So, nagkakaroon ka ng delays in repolarization. So, kapag yan ay nasa myocyte, you can have Q2 prolongation. Pwede ka magkaroon ng VTAC or torsade. Kapag naman yung neurons mo nasa, yung cell mo ay neurons, you will have the perioral numbness, the classic perioral numbness, and the peripheral paresthesia na nakikita sa hypocalcemia. You will also observe na parang hyperactive yung mga muscles mo. So, when you tap your facial nerve right in front of your ear, that's your Schwab's-Tex sign, meron kang triggering ng ipsilateral facial nerve. So, you will see contraction of the eye and mouth. Okay? May ano pa nga yan eh. May grading pa yan kung hanggang saan yung smirk or smile mo kapag nag-tap ka. Okay? Depende dun. Ma-estimate mo yung severity ng hypocalcemia. Your Trousseau sign, so you inflate a cuff halfway between your SBP and your diastolic blood pressure for about 2 to 3 minutes. Kapag tetany, okay, that's a positive Trousseau sign, baka meron kang hypocalcemia. Ang pinakapangit or ang ayaw natin with hypocalcemia is laryngospasm. So, magkakaroon ka ng upper airway obstruction, nagkakaroon ka ng respiratory distress. These are the patients na pwede nating ma-intubate because of hypocalcemia. So, for hypocalcemia, you just replace your calcium. Okay, let's now move on to acute kidney injury. So, this is a good caricature that kind of graphically illustrates the pre-renal, intrinsic, and the post-renal causes of your acute kidney injury. So, our case goes a 23-year-old man coming in at the ER due to seizures. At the resuscitation bay, it was noted that the color of the urine is tea-colored ulit. Okay, mahilig tayo sa ganito. Urinalysis was done revealing positivity of hemoglobin dipstick. CPK was also elevated. Potassium was 5.3. Okay, a little bit at the high side. Calcium was 7.7, a little low, and creatinine was elevated to 3 mg per DL. Okay, so, ang criteria natin sa AKI, tatlo. Number 1, pinakamahalaga, pinakamadaling gawin sa ER, pinakamabilis yung turnout ng result. Mag-monitor ka na ng urine output. If the urine output is less than 0.5 ml per kilo per hour for at least 6 hours, i-call mo na acute kidney injury yun. Criteria number 2, if you have increase in serum creatinine by at least 0.3 mg per DL within the next 48 hours. So, may time interval ka na 2 days, tapos may absolute increase ka ng 0.3 mg per DL. Pero sino ba naman yung papasok sa ER na merong baseline creatinine 2 days ago? No? Bihira yon, except for patients na on routine follow-up lang. Criteria number 3, you have 0.5 times increase in baseline serum creatinine within the next 7 days. So, para siyang nag-double. Okay? At least nag-double. Alright? Pero ganun din. Sino ba may creatinine na result a week ago? Konti lang yon. So, ang pinaka-effective or ang pinaka-quick na pagdadiagnose sa AKI sa ER would be monitoring your urine output. So, what is the most likely diagnosis? So, that's acute kidney injury. for our patient. What is the most likely cause of injury? This is rhabdomyolysis, likely post-ictal because of the seizure and the tetany. What supports the diagnosis of rhabdomyolysis? So you have seizure, your elevated creatinine phosphokinase, your myoglobin and your urinalysis, elevated potassium, and your low calcium. So, in acute kidney injury, so your clinical features would include a rapid decline in renal function, be it tubular, so may mga problem ka sa electrolytes, or yung pinaka-common, nagdi-decrease yung urine output mo. You will have changes in BUN and creatinine na sinabi natin na parang medyo mahirap ma-diagnose sa simula, lalo na kung wala kang baseline labs. So, classification ng AKI would be pre-renal, intrinsic, and post-renal. Be sure doon sa reviewer nyo dyan, may extensive discussion ng post-renal. Hindi ko na sinama dito kasi medyo nice to know siya. Pero tinanong siya sa boards, may mga series of questions, mga 3 to 5 questions about it. I think 2-3 years ago. So be sure to check it out if you have extra time. Pre-renal, any cause of hypoperfusion, whether cardiogenic shock, third spacing from liver failure, hypotensive ka lang, nagbi-bleed out ka, that can cause pre-renal. Intrinsic, ito yung may intrarenal or may parenchymal disease ka. Glomerulonephritis, acute GN, ATN, no? Ayan na yun. So, pre-renal cause of AKI is the most common. So, kapag meron kang distended bladder, nagpalpate ka, hydronephrosis, large volume of urine after IFC insertion, then think obstructive. Kapag yung patient mo sa ER hindi umiihi, for example, ang gagawin mo unang-una, di ba, mag-measure ka ng urine output, pero hindi mo in-insertan ng Foley. Okay? Pwede ka magkamali pag ganun. Kasi, first and foremost, hindi naman lahat freely voiding. Okay? Yung iba, nasa diaper, nag-leak, di mo ma-measure. So, ang pinaka-important, if you're suspecting AKI, mag-Foley ka. Okay? Pag nag-Foley ka, accurate yung INO mo. At the same time, kung siya ay obstructed, it's both diagnostic and therapeutic na rin. Kasi sa post-renal na AKI, you have about 1 to 2 weeks. No? Kapag 1 to 2 weeks obstructed siya, pwede siyang magtuloy-tuloy into CKD na. Magpo-Foley ka lang within that golden period, mare-reverse mo yung kanyang acute kidney injury. Mape-prevent mo yung kanyang progression to CKD. Complete anuria is uncommon in acute kidney injury unless you have the following. You have complete urinary tract obstruction, you have renal artery occlusion na bilateral, you have overwhelming shock, meaning pressure requiring ang taas ng norepinephrine, taas ng vasopressin, constricting your renal afferents, and if you have severe proliferative GN. Kunwari, may SLE ka, nag-GN ka na lupus nephritis, yan, may mga rapidly progressing glomerulonephritis, pwede kang magkaroon ng ganyan. So, if you have elevated BUN naman, out of proportion of creatinine, lalong-lalo na kung nasa ICU setup ka, think of GI bleeding. Because your hemoglobin is a protein. Kung marami kang hemoglobin sa gut, magme-metabolize yun, and it becomes your BUN. So, actually, sa ICU, kapag meron kang ganyan, mga hindi ma-explain na increase in BUN, out of proportion of your creatinine, always think of a GI bleeding na occult. Okay? Now, you know the BUN CREA ratio, di ba? Yung BCR, i-divide mo lang yon. If it's more than 20, it's pre-renal. If it's less than 10, it's intrinsic. Kung 10 to 20, gray zone, hindi mo makukuha. A more specific, not specific, a more specific measure of whether it's AKI or intrinsic or pre-renal is measuring your FeNA, your fraction of excretion of sodium. Ang gusto mong value dito is less than 1% to prove that it's pre-renal. Ngayon, baka kahit hindi nyo matandaan yung formula na una PCREA over PINA-UCREA. Yun yung aking mnemonic. So, this is FeNA, urine sodium times serum creatinine, or urine sodium times plasma creatinine over plasma sodium times urine creatinine. Okay? Kung yun ay less than 1%, it's pre-renal. Ang iisipin nyo lang dito, our kidneys are very, very efficient in reabsorbing sodium. Such that in pre-renal cases na hypovolemic ka, avidly magte-take up or magre-reabsorb ng sodium yung kidneys mo. Such that walang lumalabas sa ihi mo na sodium. That's why in pre-renal causes, yung FeNA mo is less than 1%. If it's more than 2%, ibig sabihin, you're not there's some type of dysregulation. Imbis na nagre-resorb ka, you're letting go of some sodium into your urine. That's why your FeNA is more than 2%. If intrinsic yung causes mo. So may some kind of dysregulation na. Makikita mo yun sa CKD. Okay? So, the most common clinical condition associated with pre-renal, okay, pre-renal azotemia are hypovolemia, okay, decreased cardiac output in CHF, ito yung may mga cardiorenal syndrome, and medications that can interfere with renal or autoregular responses such as NSAIDs or ACE-I. Don't confuse kasi di ba may afferent and efferent autoregulation. Yung iba kasi nako-confuse nila na yung efferent nagiging post-renal. Hindi. Nasa glomerular level pa rin yan. So, it's all pre-renal. So, your NSAIDs na nasa afferent, your ACE-I na nasa efferent, your cyclosporine na nasa afferent, they're all pre-renal causes of AKI. So, nasabi ko na kanina, double whammy, NSAID, ACE-I, or ARB, no. The most common causes naman ng intrinsic AKI are sepsis, ischemia, and nephrotoxins, especially antibiotics, mga vancomycin, mga ganyan, mga what do you call this, yung pang iba, mga polymyxins, yan yung mga pwedeng mag-cause ng acute kidney injury na drug-induced. Sa post-renal, syempre, you have bladder outlet obstruction, like our patients na mukhang may prostate problem. Okay, so in our patient na may rhabdomyolysis, so ito yung may mga traumatic crush injuries, siya seizures, yung kanina, di ba, traumatic crush injuries yun. So it will lead to destruction of your rhabdomyocytes, leading to hyper-K, hyperphos, lahat ng mga intracellular electrolytes nalalabas niya. Hyperuricemia from the DNA na nag-degenerate. You have elevated creatinine phosphokinase and hypocalcemia. Kasi nagbabound yung calcium mo dun sa mga myoglobin na nare-release, kaya ka nag-hypocalcemia. So you would imagine, no, nagkakaroon ka ng tetany sa mga ganitong patients, no, nagsi-seizure sila, etc., etc. So, the treatment would be IV hydration. Again, 4 to 6 liters. Okay, para siyang hypercalcemia. But, okay, kailangan alam mo yung source ng AKI. Kunwari, cardiorenal siya, CHF, i-hydrate mo ba yun? Siyempre, hindi. For the patient lang na may rhabdo, you hydrate your patient. You alkalinize your urine kung kinakailangan, you give your bicarb, and you diurese or force diuresis. Depende na lang kung ano yung labas ng ibang electrolytes mo. Nasabi ko na to. So, the mode of injury of your rhabdomyolysis is actually direct. Your myoglobin is directly toxic to your nephron. Ang ginagawa niya doon, nagbo-block siya doon sa tubules mo, causing your AKI. So, para may tubular obstruction ka. So, your AKI can be from glomerular causes, tubulointerstitial, or your vascular. Sa glomerular, ang prototype natin dito will be your GNs, your acute GNs, your post-rep, yung mga rapidly progressive na GN, mga ganyan. Tubulointerstitial would be your ATI, your acute tubular injury, and your acute interstitial nephritis, yung mga may mga parang allergic responses for that. Mind you, your sepsis, kahit walang shock, can cause intrinsic AKI. Okay? Hindi kailangan ng sepsis na mag-shock ka para mag-induce ng AKI. Pwedeng sepsis in itself without shock can induce AKI. Your vascular causes naman would include your atheroembolism, usually after mga PCI, mga percutaneous coronary intervention. Doon siya nangyayari. So again, mechanisms for acute kidney injury. So, kapag meron kang problem doon sa glomerular filtration. Okay. So, kunyari, may renal artery stenosis ka, wala kang flow, you give your medications na antiprostaglandin like your NSAIDs or your anti-angiotensin like your ARB or ASI. That can cause acute kidney injury. Now, moving into AKI of concerns na medyo laging na-mention sa mga exams, contrast nephropathy. Medyo controversial kasi yung iba ditong nephrologists hindi na rin naniniwala. Hindi ako masyado naniniwala sa contrast-induced nephropathy. So, they've said that your iodinated contrasts are directly toxic to your nephron. Nagkukos daw ng vasoconstriction, etc., etc., na nagkukos ng impairment ng tubular flow mo. Pero, sabi nung iba, hindi naman daw talaga yan nangyayari, no? So, classically, ang contrast-induced nephropathy ay nangyayari starting 1 to 2 days after the CT scan na may contrast. Okay? Nagpipik to in 3 to 5 days, tapos dapat in a week mawawala na. Dapat ganun siya. Now, some patients na prone daw magkaroon ng contrast-induced nephropathy are those na may baseline ng sakit sa kidney. Ang pinakamataas na risk would be having DM kidney disease or having uncontrolled diabetes. Now, atheroembolic disease naman, kanina nasabi ko na to, yung mga vascular, usually happens after PCI, mga vessel manipulation, whether nag-cabbage, nag-PCI, whatever. Ang classic dito na nakikita daw, eosinophiliuria. Hindi pa ako nakakita ng eosinophiliuria. And bihira lang naman yung nag-atheroembolic disease. Sabi nila, hindi naman daw yan lagi nangyayari, yung eosinophiliuria. And usually, kapag may ganito ka, nagpe-persist within a week yan, kahit natanggal mo na yung thrombosis doon. Okay? Sa atheroembolic diseases, kidney biopsy yung kailangan mo dito. Right? Kapag ikaw naman ay may renal artery stenosis, okay, kunyari, hindi mo nakita na, kunyari, may uncontrolled hypertension ka, hindi mo na-consider ang renal artery stenosis, tapos high blood, nagbigay ka ng antihypertensives, nagbigay ka ng creatinine, ng ASI, tapos sobrang nag-shoot up ang creatinine, think of renal artery stenosis pag ganun. Kasi kapag may renal artery stenosis ka, like in this one, flow dependent na lang yung glomerular filtration pressure mo or your blood flow rate. So kapag nawala yung flow na yon, binigyan mo pa ng ASI, so imbis na mag-dam up yung kaunting-kaunting nagtitrickle na blood doon sa glomerulus, tas nile-let go mo pa, lalo ka mag-i-ASI, mag-i-increase or mag-shoot up dramatically yung krea mo. So ito yung mga classic na mga parang buzz words or buzz thoughts na hanapin nyo para mag-diagnose sa exam. So, punta naman tayo sa CKD. So, this is the last topic for your nephrology. Okay, so you have a 50-year-old male with long-standing DM nephropathy. Presents to the ER with chest pain, exacerbated by deep breathing, nausea, vomiting, weakness, and changes in sensorium. I don't know if you can hear this. I think not, no? Hindi siya nagwo-work. But, it should sound like a pericardial friction rub. So, it's like para siyang Velcro na buong S1 and S2 nandun siya, hindi siya nawawala, and relatively same pitch. Okay, so yung patient mo, mukhang DM nephropathy, CKD na talaga, tapos meron siyang chest pain, mukhang may pericarditis. Okay, nauseated and vomiting, mukha siyang may uremia, weak, so hindi natin alam kung meron siyang electrolyte problems, and may changes in sensorium. So definitely very, very uremic. So your PE confirms the possibility of pericarditis. You have elevated jugular venous pressure as shown, but you have clear lung sounds. But on the in the precordium, meron kang harsh na S1 and S2. So laboratory test shows anemia, elevated potassium, markedly elevated creatinine, and BUN. So sa PE mo, nakita ka ng uremic frost. So this one, and then meron kang mga calciphylaxis. Okay, so ito yun. Right? So, what is the most likely diagnosis? Is CKD uremia with hyperkalemia and possible uremic pericarditis. And the most important initial diagnostic step would be to distinguish CKD from AKI. Pero mind you, sa hospital setting, lalong-lalo na sa ER, usually itong mga to, may AKI component yan on top of CKD. Hindi siya purely CKD lang. Usually may nag-trigger sa CKD, kaya siya, may nag-trigger sa kanya sa isang stable CKD na na-push na para maging CKD na kailangan niya na mag-dialyze and stuff like that. And usually, yun ay AKI from something else. Kunyari, nagkaroon ng infection, sepsis, on a CKD patient, mga ganyan. What is the most urgent treatment in this case? So, the most urgent treatment, dahil may pericarditis na, uremic na yung patient mo, you have to dialyze your patient. Okay. Very important, pwedeng lumabas to dun sa ibang parts ng exam nyo, pwedeng lumabas sa physio, pwedeng lumabas dun sa pedia, okay? Be sure to know by heart the Cockcroft and Gault formula in estimating your CREA clearance. Kahit hindi ito yung pinaka tawag dito, parang nagko-correlate clinically with manifestations and prognosis, ito pa rin yung tinatanong sa exam. So that's CREA clearance in mils per minute is equal to 140 minus H times the ideal body weight. Ideal body weight, tatandaan nyo itong formula na to. Sorry kasi kailangan nyo talagang tandaan. Over 72 times your serum creatinine. Times 0.85 pag sa females kasi mas mababa yung lean mass nila. Mas konti yung CREA nila. Okay? So, you diagnose CKD if you have structural or functional problems with or without decrease in GFR for more than 3 months. With or without kasi meron kang non-oliguric na mga AKI, di ba, na pwede mag-progress. Kunwari, may mga tubulopathy, channelopathy na problems, pwede kang mag-call na CKD na yun. Common yan sa mga medications like like aminoglycosides, mga non-oliguric yan na AKI, progressing into CKD. So, to stage your CKD, it is necessary to compute for your CLIA clearance. Nung student ako, madali lang yung buhay namin. Kasi ito, wala kaming ganito. Ano lang, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ano lang yun? More than 90, 60 to 90, 30 to 60, 15 to 30, less than 15. Yun na yung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 na stage. Pero kayo, kailangan yung kabisaduhin ito. So, you have G1 to 5, tas yung stage 3 na hati into G3A and G3B into 45 to 59, 30 to 44. Hinati lang yung gitnang yon. And then, kami, alam lang namin na albuminuria is parang an independent predictor of mortality in CKD. Dati ganun lang. Pero ngayon, hinati-hati na to. Dati ang alam lang namin, it's either less than 30 na maganda pa yung prognosis or more than 300 na mas magiging aggressive ka sa control ng albuminuria or proteinuria. Dito nakahati na into A1, A2, and A3. Less than 30 mg per gram is normal to mildly increase. A2 is 30 to 300. More than 300 is severely increased. So, syempre, kapag nandun ka sa severely increase, ayaw mo ng albuminuria, dito ka gagamit ng mga ACE-I kung kaya pa, kung wala kang problema sa potassium and stuff like that. Yung mga ARB, dito mo sila gagamitin. Dito mo rin gagawin yung mga more aggressive ka sa hypertensive BP control or mas aggressive ka in controlling your sugar. Okay? So, because it takes time for kidneys to shrink as a result of chronic disease, the finding of bilaterally small kidneys supports a diagnosis of CKD in those with long duration CKD na. Okay, ibig sabihin, irreversible na yon pag nakakita ng small kidneys. Okay, so other signs and symptoms ng CKD would be the following. So, you have elevated BP kasi hindi ka na nagpuput up ng urine, so you're overloaded, you have anemia, you have low platelet, kasi wala kang erythropoietin na galing sa kidney mo, You have nausea and vomiting because of your uremic symptoms. You can have restless legs, also a manifestation of uremia. And then a ton of electrolyte imbalance, hyperphos, hypocalcemia, hyper-K, hypermagnesemia, and metabolic acidosis. Ito yung mga syndromic na mga electrolyte or blood chem disturbances sa CKD. So, laging tinatanong sa rounds, sa exam din, no? You will have bilaterally small kidneys in CKD except for the following. Ang mnemonic ko dito dati ay HAP-D. So, HIVAN, your HIV associated nephropathy, your amyloidosis, polycystic kidney disease, and your diabetic nephropathy. Okay, hindi ko alam kung bakit yun yung mnemonic ko. So, again, uremia refers to the signs and symptoms associated with accumulation of nitrogenous waste. So, kapag sinabing, bakit siya uremic? Tapos, ang sagot ng student, mataas po yung creatinine. Mali. No? It's because of the BUN, not the creatinine. Okay? It's the BUN that makes you uremic, that makes you vomit, that makes you nauseated, that decreases your sensorium. Okay? Ito yung mga classic na mga parang mga telltale signs na nandun na siyang stage. Hindi ko alam kung magagamit nyo rin sa G3, G4, G5, pero sinasabi pa rin siya sa Harrison's. So, kapag nagkaroon ka ng normocytic normochronic anemia, usually, CKD3, nagsastart na siya. Pero it becomes almost universal at stage 4, such that yung mga naka-stage 4, ito na yung mga ini-EPO mo, EPO-alpha, no? Weekly, bi-weekly, mga ganyan. And then, yung mortality ng CKD, lagi rin niyang tinatanong. Cardiovascular disease is still the leading cause of morbidity and mortality in patients at every stage of CKD. So, you may want to control risks for stroke and heart attack. So, nagsastatin yung mga tao, BP control, sugar control, mga ganyan. Smoking cessation, stuff like that. To prolong patients na may CKD. So, yun yung mga sinasabi namin. So, hindi lang yung dialysis. Hindi mo naman makokontrol yung stroke tsaka heart attack, di ba? So, when to start dialysis, very, very important for you, lalong-lalo na sa mga mag-moonlight. Kailan kayo magre-refer sa nephro to start an HD. Okay? So, when the patient had uremic symptoms, when the patient has intractable hyper-K, like we talked about earlier, kunyari nag-furo ka, hindi umiihi, hyper-K pa rin, wala ka na magawa, HD ka na. Persistent volume expansion despite diuretics, hindi talaga umiihi, fluid overloaded, x-ray, congested, crackles all over, mag-HD ka na. Refractory acidosis, very, very difficult to control, and I think ito yung mga makikita mo pa lang sa ER, hindi mo matitiis dahil sobrang acidotic yung bleeding, ida-dialyze mo yung mga yan. Sometimes, patients come in with CKD, may mga ugib yan. Okay? Tapos, okay naman yung platelet nila, okay yung PT-PT INR. It's because of a qualitative defect sa platelet ng mga uremic, kaya ganyan. So, you may want to dialyze these patients then. Yung mga may EGFR na 10 mils, okay, na pababa, ito yung usually na nag-i-initiation dialysis na elective. Yung sasabihin mo, nakita mo sa OPD, 9 na yung EGFR nila, sabihin mo, tay, kung gusto mo, start na tayo ng dialysis, admit na kita. Okay, ito yun, no? Parang kakausapin mo sila na ma-admit. For absolute indications for dialysis, remember the mnemonic, IEOU, so your vowels lang. Your acidosis, intractable, electrolytes because of your calcium, your potassium, your calcium din, hypercalcemia, pwede rin indication yon for dialysis. Intoxication, especially yung mga dialysable na medications, fluid overload, and uremia. So for the pearls, kapag may uremic pericarditis ka, dun sa patient natin, usually kasi kapag nagda-dialyze ka, may heparin yung kasama, tatanggalin mo yung heparin. No, hindi mo na iintayin yung mga INR na range or kung may bleeding ba siya. Kapag may pericarditis ka, prone kasi mag-convert yun into hemopericardium. So, wag ka nang mag-heparin sa mga patients na ito, like our patient. So, I think that ends our nephrology session and good luck with nephro. Madali lang yan.